I'm so relieved that that looked like it worked. Hello, everyone. I'm Abby from Pro Writing Aid, and today we're joined by Samantha Scow. A fan of mysteries of all kinds, Samantha is an agented author currently working on her debut novel and an author accelerator certified book coach whose practice focuses on coaching fiction writers through and out of revision hell. So thanks so much for joining us, Samantha.
Thank you so much
We're
for
ready to
having
get
me.
started.
Sure am. Yeah, let me give this a shot and make sure it works. Should I just share my screen?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Are you seeing How to Get Out of Revision Hell for science fiction writers?
Yeah, that all looks
Maybe
good
not.
to me.
It looks good, it's showing.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Hi, everybody. It is so nice to see you all. There are 287 of you right now, which is really fun. I think that's the biggest, 291, biggest webinar I've ever talked to. So it's just an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks to Haley and Abby for having me. And I could not be more excited to talk to y'all about how to get out of revision hell today. So I'm going to dive right in. This presentation is geared toward writers with full manuscripts. And even if you don't have a full manuscript, that's okay. Hopefully you'll walk away from learning something from this and be able to apply it later. And I'm also talking to writers who are in revision hell or thinking about getting into it. And I'll explain what revision hell is and how I define it in just a second. But hopefully you fall into one of these camps. But again, if you don't, you will learn something from this. In the next 45 minutes, we are going to cover what revision hell is, how to avoid it and make it work for you. And then I'm going to go through some pretty common feedback issues. I have received all of these. And so I'm going to walk you through how to self-identify those, pinpoint them, solve them, and hopefully set yourself up for success for self-revision going forward. And at the end, I'm going to leave about 10 to 12 minutes for Q&A. And I'm also going to cover best practices for how and when to use beta readers, critique groups, those beautiful, precious resources that we have in our lives. So who I am, as Abby said, I am an author accelerator certified book coach. Very proud to be one of those. It is a wonderful company and really it is a dream job. So it's an absolute pleasure to be talking about all of this today. I focus my practice on revision. I do generally have mystery, thriller, and suspense people in my coaching practice because that is what I write, but I adore science fiction and love the cross genre, mysteries in space, thrillers in space, what have you. So that is why I'm here talking to you today. And also revision applies across all fiction. So hopefully you will be able to use my lessons in suspense and apply them to your own novel. I'm also an agented author. I'm in my debut, I'm working on my debut in revision number 20, if you can believe it. And I tell you that not to bum you out, but to let you know that this is a very normal path to be on. There are so many people that go through so many revisions. And so part of revision hell is just kind of being in the moment with the revision and going through this entire process. I also am the co-director of Pitch Fest for International Thriller Writers, Thriller Fest, that's a handful to say, which is a conference that happens in the first week of June every year in New York. Huge fan. If you ever find yourself around that area and want to come, please don't hesitate. It's an absolutely wonderful place and we just nerd out and talk writing the entire week. I have not always been in the publishing world. Before this, I had many jobs, but one of the most recent was working in HR and tech for the last 10 years, where I like to describe it as professional cat herding. It was a wonderful time and I do miss parts of it, but I adore that I'm able to talk about story all day long, every day. And finally, I am an expat. I currently live in Switzerland. I'm coming at you from Zurich, which is why it's sort of late evening, early evening here. I'm American. If you can't tell, I'm told that when I talk to people here, I am very American. So don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I'll take it. And I just adore being near all the wildflowers and cows with bells, and I love cheese. So great place to be living. And if you have any questions about what that's like, feel free to let me know. All right, so what is revision hell? This is the dark place. It's at its worst where we think about giving up on our manuscripts. I have been there several times. I try to avoid my clients being there, but sometimes it happens. But it is also a completely delightful place to be, and I adore it. And the reason for this is because a lot of the hard work is done already. You have written 100,000 words, 120,000 words. You know what your story is, even if there's some tangents that we're going to work on kind of tightening up. You have a vision, you know who these characters are. All of that is so beautiful and needs to be celebrated. And so this is one of the reasons that I love it. It's also where we get to see our stories pop. So it's where we see them come to light, where we see where we can get down into the weeds and pull up the thing that, like, you know, the beautiful flower, to keep that metaphor going. And then it's a chance to step back and see your story as a whole, which is another really magical place to be. It's something you can't do until you already have an entire manuscript. I think especially if you're coming at it from revision, you can plan, but things change over time. So I just think this is a wonderful place to be, despite how hard it is. And the reason it is hard is because any number of these things I'm sure y'all can relate to because you're watching this webinar about revision hell, but conflicting feedback, you know, you might have some betas or critique partners or editors or agents or whatever who are telling you, I love this, but not this. And then somebody else says, I love the thing that the other person said they just don't like, and I really love the thing that they said they do like, or not like, you know what I'm trying to say, opposites. You might have people who read it and they totally get something with one part of it, but they don't get something else. All of this can be really, really frustrating, and it often takes a long time to hear back from these people. And so it ends up just kind of dragging out the entire process. Waiting is very hard. I recently just got through like a 2.5-month wait to hear some feedback on my manuscript, and I can really empathize with how difficult that is. But we always get through it. And this is part of the reason that revision is what it is. We also often don't have a clear path to identifying what's wrong. So we feel overwhelmed. We have a lot to do. We're not sure where to start. I am going to walk you through how to make this not be the case for you today, but I just want to start off by saying that these are the things that make revision really tough. So how do you avoid it? This is a 6-step process. And I do want to caveat this by saying that everyone's brain works differently. When I first came to writing, I absorbed every single craft book. There are many craft books that I really, really love. I'm going to be talking about one of them today, and a single tool that I think is the most magical, and it's my most favorite writerly tool. But I do recognize and appreciate that there are so many other ways that you can approach writing your story. So Jessica Brody is giving an intensive later on. I adore her. Save the Cat is an amazing book. The Story Grid Method, awesome. Hero's Journey. If you've never watched Kurt Vonnegut, the 2.5-minute video where he graphs out Cinderella, this is a wonderful way to kind of see your story as a whole. Pixar's Story Spine is another one. There's a great Medium article on that if you want to Google it, but basically it's once upon a time, which is the setup, until one day, inciting incident, because of that, because of that, because of that, until finally, which is the climax, and then now, which is the resolution. And so all these things can work in conjunction together to help you create what you need to, which is at a certain point, we need to see our entire story as a whole so we can see what's wrong. And part of the challenge in seeing what's wrong is seeing what's not there, which is why this tool, Author Accelerator's Inside Outline, is my most favorite. I keep this book on my desk. I show it to my clients all the time. I think I've sold lots and lots of books for Jenny. So Jenny Nash, I'm proud to call her a mentor and a friend. She is the genius creator of the Inside Outline, the blueprint for a book method, and the founder of Author Accelerator. I'm going to be referencing the Inside Outline and particularly her how-to very frequently throughout this presentation. And so if you don't know what I'm talking about, put a pin in that and check her out. Go to jennynash.com/fiction blueprint. Buy this book. It's it lasts, I think it's like $3 or $4. And learn what the Inside Outline is, what her methods are, because all of this sits on top of that. And I will give you a high level view, but I just want to caveat all of this by saying she's amazing, this tool is amazing, and all this is meant to be used in conjunction. AuthorAccelerator.com is a company that certifies book coaches. It's where I learned to be a book coach. It's very vigorous training, so useful, and it gave me my dream job. So what is the inside outline? The inside outline combines plot, which is what happens, with point, which is why it matters to the protagonist. Why do we care about the point? The reason for this is because plot is only relevant when we know how it affects the POV character, usually the protagonist, at least in part, when we're writing our stories. So if you think about your favorite 3-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever in your life, they might tell you a story like, I went to the park and then I met a dog, and then I thought about a dragon, and then there was this cloud, and then there was a flower, and like, it's cute. But after about 20 seconds, you're like, okay, I'm trying to follow and I can't because it's confusing and I don't know what any of this means to you. That is a very hyperbolic example of plot without emotion, right? We don't know why meeting the dog mattered to the 3-year-old. And so we don't know, perhaps this was the first time they ever met a dog. That's a huge moment. And if they were able to articulate that, they might have said that and we might be more engaged. The point is also where you can track emotional arcs. So I am a child of the 90s. So I like to refer with my clients to, this beginning misbelief as the major malfunction. And so we start off with the major malfunction and we see it change over time. That's the emotional arc. We want to see change in story because story is change. Why is the inside outline so important and such a magical tool? Fun story, I used to be a hardcore pantser. When I first started writing, I've been writing my whole life, but when I first kind of seriously sat down and tried to write a novel, I very much, wanted to just let the muse sort of come at me. And I think that that is a wonderful way to write. And I still do that when I'm exploring what a new story might look like before I use the blueprint to actually plan it out. I am no longer a hardcore pantser. I am what I like to call I pants to a certain point and then I plan aggressively, and I use the inside outline both with revision and with planning out any new stories. Like I said, I'm on revision 20. I, without exaggerating, have probably overwritten my first novel by about 300,000 words. This is not an uncommon tale, and it can be avoided to a certain extent, although I do feel like writing a novel is the best way to learn how to write a novel. But that said, the inside outline saves you from so many places where you don't, you might go off on a tangent where, you're writing a story about a locked room mystery on an island, which is the premise for my book. And all of a sudden, we're watching the character do this, and then all of a sudden there's a spaceship. And so I guess this story is about space now. Unless that was your original goal and it serves the story, it's not super helpful. So part of the reason the inside outline is so wonderful is because it's malleable as well. If you did have this idea about a spaceship coming in and changing the entire course of the story, maybe that shows you that that's the ultimate story that you want to tell. And so you can use the inside outline to actually see how that ripple effects across the entire story, be able to change things, have a plan, all of that. And it also allows you to see logic jumps, plot holes. If you're going through, and I'll get more into this in just a second, but you can see where something is missing, which is the whole point of doing this. And it is a very difficult thing to see what's not there. And the inside outline is the very best tool that I have found to be able to allow you to do that. And then finally, 3 pages, which is your limit, is much easier to see than 400 pages. To quote Jenny Nash, she always says it allows you to hold your story in your hands. And I 100%, 1000% agree with that. It really is, makes a huge difference. So the first step to avoiding revision hell is to make an as-is inside outline. So what you're going to do is go chapter by chapter and write down what happens with why it matters to the protagonist. You will very probably quickly see, if you're anything like me when you go through and do a revision, that you do have some scenes that don't really have a point. They don't change something for the protagonist. They're more about somebody exploring something externally. And so that's a place where you might go back in and say, okay, I need to sort of get more emotion on the page here, let the reader in more, let them understand why this matters. The reason you're going to do this is because even if you are one of these magical beings who plots with 80-page documents and you know exactly what happens in each scene and you've already gone through this process, deviation is super common. And I promise that this exercise will be worth it. So go through chapter by chapter. You're going to do a max of 3 pages, single space, 12 point, Times New Roman, and a max of 6 lines per plot point pairing. So the plot will be 3, the point will be 3, or you can cheat and have 4 and 2 or what have you. This will allow you to be able to see where things might be affected. So plot is, like I said, is external, point is internal. You're going to name the major malfunction in each point. This is how you track the change over time. And it's not going to be a, massive, like huge change in every scene. There's going to be scenes where there's smaller changes and there will be scenes where there's bigger changes. But if you're struggling with this, ask yourself, what does each scene mean to the POV character? How does it change them? And then again, if you're struggling, go to jennynash.com/fiction blueprint. She has many wonderful free resources on there to help you out. So for example, this is a sample of one of my plot point pairings from my debut novel. You can see that, I'll let you read this on your own, but basically I have someone arriving on the locked room mystery island. There's a little bit of setup. Somebody recognizes somebody else, somebody acts weird, and then there's somebody who goes missing. The reason that matters is because the person that goes missing matters very, very much to the person whose POV it is. And she's terrified that this thing that happened in her past is going to happen again. So immediately we're seeing something happen in the plot that affects her, and she decides that she can't let this person down. And you can see down at the bottom there, I have some brackets. This is where I'm tracking things like I'm introducing a twist that's going to be revealed halfway through. And I'm also tracking who the reader most suspects. So obviously this is going to be a little more relevant if you're writing something with mystery or thriller, but it does work for whatever you're trying to track in the story. So magic tool. Step 2, take a break. The reason for this is because big picture documents are not easy. So if you can take a week, that's good. If you can take 3 weeks, that's even better. Because again, your goal is to see what's not there. Reader clarity is one of the most important things that I coach. I see it with every single manuscript, including my own. And this is one of those things that crops up immediately with the inside outline, because you can track, okay, the reader is knowing this here, and then all of a sudden we're jumping over here. If the reader is not clear, they're going to disengage from the story and they're going to pull out. And what we want to do is hook them on page 1 and make sure that they are completely hooked and engaged for the entirety of the book. So while you're taking this break, draft your book jacket copy, which is also your query, your story hook, your story question. The reason for this is it helps you understand what you want the reader to walk away with at the end, what story hook you're promising to them. And if you're struggling with kind of what kind of story it is, which can happen in revision, especially when we're kind of in the weeds and we've gotten a bunch of feedback, this can really help solidify for you what your vision for the story is, which is the most important thing. Step 3 is putting on your editor hat. So this is different than your writer hat. Again, you're going to try to see what's not there, and you're going to go through your as is inside outline and start making a list. This checklist that Jenny provides, I also have one that sort of sits on top of hers that leads you a little bit deeper into some aspects of it that are suspense related. But what you're going to do is have your as is inside outline over here and your to-do list over here, and just start listing everything that you see. You can ask yourself, what is your story hook? Do you have that clearly stated? Does it resolve in the end? Do everyone's actions make sense? Is there logical flow? If you have a person doing bad things over here and they suddenly jump over here and it's not clear how they did that or why they did that, that's a chance to make it more clear for the reader. Does everybody have agency? Are all the coincidences or MacGuffins out? A MacGuffin, for those of you who don't know, I heard this at Thrillerfest this year, is when you have the hero sort of be saved by something that they didn't set up. So it's a coincidence, but often it ends up really affecting the plot. I've heard it said that you can have negative of these. I've heard it said that you can have one. I personally think that the reason that we read fiction is to watch someone make decisions and see them change over time. And so if you do have a MacGuffin that comes in and saves the hero during that climactic scene, make sure they set it up like 2 or 3 scenes ahead of time, so that it's there and it's still showing agency, even if there is something spectacular that happens. Anchoring and reader clarity, again, reader clarity is so important, but particularly with science fiction, where you might be talking about a world that doesn't match our current story, or our current present, not story present. Who, what, where, when, why. I have this as like an auto complete on in my Word document, so that when I type this for my clients and when I'm going through my own, I remember to go back in. The reader wants to not be pulled out. They want it to be completely clear about who is talking, what they're doing, why they're there, where they are, when they are, and why any of this matters to them. And I like to do this at the top of every chapter. So, you know, I'm not talking like multiple paragraphs of describing the what's going on around them, but we do want to know, you know, has some time passed? Is it 15 minutes, 5 seconds, 2 days? Who's talking? What are they doing? Bring me back into the story. Many readers kind of drop off at the end of a chapter, and so they want to be reminded when they come back what's going on. All right, so everyone's emotional arcs clear. Do they have them? Do they change over time? You know, we want to see them have their major malfunction. Does that come up against the external plot and like force a change for them? Do they have to make a decision? Are there subplots, POVs, and characters that don't push the narrative forward? Those might be places where you can think about taking them out. Don't delete them, just put them in a different file. But, you know, if you're too long, for example, that's something that can help. When I talk about stakes with my clients, I like to think of it in terms of fear, which sounds really dark, but it really kind of gets to the heart of why something matters to someone, because ultimately why something matters is a lot of the time about what they're afraid of happening. And so, you know, if you have somebody, a protagonist who is very concerned about this other person, do we know why they are so concerned? Are they afraid of something particular? And is that clear on the page for the reader so that they can then worry about that as well? All of this feeds into suspense, which is the driving force behind what engages readers and keeps those pages turning. And then info dumps, flashbacks. Obviously, sometimes there need to be some descriptions about what's going on in this world, but is every single one of those descriptions, every single flashback, is it relevant to story present? Do we understand as the reader why we're hearing about this? There's kind of a contract when an author sets into a novel that the reader is picking up, and the reader is understanding that everything that is listed in this book is going to be relevant. And so part of the, you know, when you hear the word info dump and it's said in kind of like a bad way, that's because it's pulling the reader out and it doesn't feed into the story present. It's not informing what's going on in the story. We don't need to know this right now. And so it pulls people out. And that leads me into the importance of suspense. So like I said in the beginning, this is mainly what I coach. I coach mystery, thriller, suspense. That crosses genres, but suspense is the driving force. It's what keeps the reader turning those pages. And again, our goal is to hook them on page 1 and not let them go until it's 4 a.m. if they stayed up way past their bedtime, and then they go to Amazon or wherever they buy books and buy your next book immediately. That's the goal. So one of the things that you can use in your writerly toolbox with this is use hanging questions. This is a super common thing in mystery, thriller, suspense, but you're basically encouraging the reader to think at the end of a chapter, the end of a scene, what's going to happen? If this happens, what's the protagonist going to do? Do we know why they're scared of that thing happening? Are they making decisions about what they're going to do next, or do they not know? Why are they doing this thing? You know, and if you end it right there, the reader's going to turn the page to find out the answer. As you are brainstorming, when you're going through your as-is inside outline, if you come up with something that you think is genius, make a copy of your as-is inside outline and see how that plays out. I like to use different font colors. I'm a big fan of using color in my writing because it makes it very easy to track what's going on. But you can also use track changes. But for example, you know, going back to my truly terrible example of having an island and then having a random spaceship come and like abduct everybody. What if I played with that? You know, if I'm kind of stuck in my revision and this is a side tangent that might make sense, but I don't want to go through and mess with like my main document, make a copy, see how it plays out, have fun with it. Another thing to ask yourself is, you know, are the character motivations clear? Do we know what the force of opposition is? Do we know why this matters to them? Do we know what the characters want? A place where I think a lot of people, including myself, can always spend more time is understanding the antagonist, or the person doing bad things in the story. And even if that's something like a company, do we know what their goal is? These characters, as I'm sure you've heard a million times, I know I have, is they are the heroes of their own story. They are doing what they think is right to achieve their goals. And so do we know what those goals are? Do we understand why they think the way they do? And I'm not talking about dumping in 50 pages of backstory for them, but it is important for you as the author to understand these things and make it clear for the reader on the page. Murder Your Darlings, a little dark, but definitely advice that I wholeheartedly agree with. These are not things that are bad. It just might mean that there are scenes or little chunks of text or metaphors or something else that don't serve the story drive. They don't serve the forward momentum. They don't help the story move forward. So delete these things out of your document, but then put them, and I actually have a folder called this, Genius Ideas to Use Later. It's important to pump ourselves up and at any, whenever possible, because writing is hard. So every time you have one of these, add everything that you see to your issue list. So, you might have something that's quite small. You might have, as you're reading through, you might just kind of like tag a little chunk and say, okay, on page 55, move it to the Genius Ideas to Use Later document. Step 4 is to organize your list. You're going to go hardest to easiest. And the reason for that is because hard things affect a lot. So I'm talking like major plot changes, starting and ending in a new place, introduction of a spaceship, POV changes, maybe you're adding somebody, removing somebody, removing coincidences, making sure that the hero is making a decision so that the thing that saves them in the end is already set up. Motivation adjustments, that can sometimes be very subtle, but affect almost everything in the book. More minor things are things like name changes, adding who, what, where, when, why, anchors, head hopping. We all do it. It's a thing that happens. Make a note of that and move on. Like I said, info dumps that don't serve the narrative drive. And then if you're missing kind of a key logical thing, like if it's something that's easy to add in to get on the page, that's a more minor thing. So you will rank your list, and then you are going to tackle it in your manuscript. And the reason that this is not revision hell is because you have a plan, and having a plan makes a really big difference. One of the biggest things I see with people in this stage is that they get derailed. So it's super easy as you start going back through your manuscript to start noticing like a million other things. Don't forget them, add them to your list, just keep a running list at the bottom, but don't allow yourself to, kind of end up rewriting like loop revision. You want to tackle it in the way that you've already set it up. You've already thought through this. You can do it. It's hard, but this whole process does work. And I have nodding in quotes there because that is one of my favorite words. My characters nod more than anyone humanly can nod. At last count in revision number 19, I had like 83 instances of it. And so all I need to do is add this to my list and just put nod, and then I can do Control F on Word, find it, change it, etc. Another little trick is to use TK. That's an editing mark that there, as far as I am aware, are no words that have T and K next to them in the English language. And so it makes it easy to search. So let's say you have something where you need to figure out how this thing works, but you're not ready to kind of like do all that research and get into the weeds with it. Just put TK thing and go back through at the end. And once you have time and figure all of that out. Filter words too was, passive voice, all that kind of stuff, add it to your list. Like I said, this is hard. It's going to take a while, but it will not feel hellish because you have a plan. And then step 6 is to repeat. So once you have already done this and you've gotten your manuscript as far as you can, you've conquered everything on your list, you're going to make a new as is inside outline, which basically is adjusting the one that you have been working off of, but sometimes that might be something that's quite a big change. And so make a new one. This forces you to reread, which at this point, can be difficult because you've already read your manuscript a whole lot, but it does being forced to go through chapter by chapter is the very best way that I have found to make revision hell not hellish. Keep using your checklist, keep going through, and then iterate until there are no more big issues that you can see. And then use beta readers, use your critique group, potentially hire a professional developmental editor, book coaches. We are out there and ready to help, but I firmly believe that, you know, if you're in revision hell and you can approach some of these big issues that you see, you're going to benefit more from somebody coming in and telling you what you can't see than to have someone come in at the beginning and tell you things you already know. So using beta readers and critique groups, these are very, very precious resources. These people, particularly, I'll use mystery as an example, you only get to show someone a mystery once before they're going to not be able to see where it's going anymore, right? Like once they find out the person doing bad things, you're not going to be able to forget that unless you completely change it. And so use them wisely. Don't kind of blast out your story to 25 people and hope for the best. Use them very selectively and very much with intention. I say no more than 2 or 3 per iteration, and use each of these people to answer very particular questions, which I will give you an example of in just a second. The cons of this is that it's often not big picture feedback. So not everybody is a trained professional editor. Big picture feedback is really hard to give because it forces somebody to take a step back and see the entire story, which takes training. And so often, you know, I've had some truly wonderful friends, bless them, who basically copy edited my manuscript because they thought that's what I was looking for. It is not. I wanted to know whether or not they figured out who did it. I wanted to know when they were kind of pulled out of the story, when they got bored. And then again, conflicting feedback, it's really tough. So how do you know what to listen to? Everyone has filters. Everyone's going to come at your book with a slightly different filter for what they like, what they don't like. You will not be able to please everybody. And so if somebody really doesn't get it, either it's an opportunity for reader clarity because you're not getting it on the page, you're not saying the thing, or it means that they're not your ideal reader, and that's okay. You know, like there's going to be people who don't like your writing, that don't like your book. There are definitely people who do not like what I write about, and that is totally fine because for every one of them, there's going to be 100 that do like what I want. And so I want to tell the best version of my story, get my vision on the page as best I can to reach those people that will love what I'm putting out there. And so to that end, only use what resonates with your vision. If somebody, you know, if somebody read my mystery and they were like, actually, this would be better as a romance, I would take that and be like, okay, I could potentially add a romantic subplot. It does add suspense. But, you know, if that doesn't fit what I'm trying to do here, that's okay. I'll just kind of put that in this box over here and listen to the next person. So before sending, like I said, polish, edit, read your entire manuscript out loud or have your computer read it to you. There are many services, I believe, including ProWritingAid, that will do this. And it really makes a big difference for catching like repeated words, missing words, whatever. You don't want your betas to be distracted by this kind of thing. So you want to do your level best to get it to be as polished as possible before you send them. And like I said, selectively and with intention, ask beta readers and critique group specific questions. So these are my top 4 that I like to give people depending on what I'm focused on at the time. So when did you stop reading? This isn't like taking the dog out or feeding the baby. This is like you put it down because you were bored. That leads into pacing. Was anyone confused at any point? If they are, have them mark the page number. So that I know what to go back in and I can look and make sure that what I'm trying to accomplish is clear on the page. At what point were they hooked? Ideally, this is on page 1, but if somebody is like, oh, I didn't really get into it until page 40, what's on page 40? Think about starting your story there. And then finally, if there is a person doing bad things in your book, when did your readers figure out who did it? If there are several twists, did they see them coming, etc. So common feedback issues and how to fix them. I believe we are tracking for time. Good job, us. Okay, so I have received every single one of these comments multiple times. They're all tough to hear because they all sound pretty vague up front and you're just like, I don't really know what to do with this. So I'm going to do my best to give you high level help on what you could possibly think about in your own manuscript if you do get one of these comments. So pacing is off. This typically is just that you have too much high followed by not enough low, and it doesn't go like this. The readers don't want to, like, with the exception, there are always exceptions, right? But in general, we want to be able to give the reader some breathing room. So we want high intense moments followed by like a low moment of reflection, so that the, ideally with some decision the making that's happening, so that the reader can be like, okay, now we're diving back in, we're going to go climb a mountain, or, I don't know, jump off a cliff or whatever it is. Those were both kind of the same metaphor, but you get my point. So when you go through your as is inside outline, highlight the high and low moments, use different colors. Colors are wonderful. I actually like to print it out for this, but you can also obviously do it on Word, but use like red for intense and blue for chill, and go through and just look at the colors. And so if you have a bunch of red up at the top and a bunch of blue kind of down at the bottom, what can you add and adjust so that that ends up being more of a, this kind of thing. Actually, it's like this because it goes up and to the right. But again, too much low in a row, add some suspense, add some action shots, or action things that happen in the plot that will kind of increase the suspense. If there's too much high, add a recap scene, give someone a cup of coffee and have them be like, okay, here's where we are, here's what we're going to do next. Too predictable. Often this is because the reveals and twists that we are trying to get into the story are, we're giving the reader too many clues. And so, look at your inside outline. If you haven't done this while you were doing it, go back through and use those brackets to track what clues you're giving the reader. And you might be surprised at how many clues you have in there. The goal is to get to the point where your beta reader is like, I did not see that coming until it happened, but then when I looked back, that made perfect sense and I feel so satisfied. So think about what can be removed. Think about what you can do with misdirection. So misdirection is not always like, I found this bloody knife on the ground and it actually has nothing to do with this, although that could work in in a particular kind of story. Use inner thought. So, if a character is looking at a scene happening in front of them and trying to interpret it, have them go real hard into thinking that it's only one possible interpretation. Whereas in actuality, the person doing the thing has completely different motivations and, is not at all doing what the POV character is thinking they're doing. That is misdirection. The reader will go with you, with the POV character, and you can deliberately lead them to think a certain thing, which makes the reveal or the twist happen much more satisfyingly later. And by the way, reveals and twists are different. Reveals are an answer to a question that you have set up at the very beginning or halfway through or what have you, that the reader is hoping to get the answer to and will expect to get the answer to at some point. And twists are a reversal of a logical assumption, which again, you can direct them into thinking by using inner thought. And then finally, if you're getting things like it's too predictable because this trope has been done a million times. So tropes are wonderful. Most stories are based on some kind of trope. I adore them. And I think that they work for a very good reason, which is that they resonate. They're, it's the same story being told over and over again. But the way that you make this different is by adjusting aspects of it. So I'll use romance here as an example, like the friends to lovers or enemies to lovers trope. That works because it's classic, right? Like you can read 25 books that have that as kind of the main story question, and what's going to happen. You can predict what's going to happen, but it doesn't matter because you're happy to read what this author has done with the world that they've invented, with the plot that they've invented, with the obstacles they've put in their way, etc. So think about how you can tweak things just a little bit to make it more fresh. Not believable. Readers they'll go along with you. They just need to be plausible. They need a plausible reason to believe you. So Harry Potter, for example, classic example because it works. We accept that he is a wizard living in this world and that there are muggles and that magic exists. We're told that at the beginning, we're in. It's the exact same thing with anything you're asking the reader to believe. And so, if you have somebody who's like a Jason Bourne character or something, and we're meant to believe that this person is kind of superhuman, we'll go along with it as long as we understand that this was this person's experience growing up. They've trained toward it. They were trained, they went to some kind of secret training that taught them how to be super spies, whatever it is. Just give the reader a little bit so that they understand where you're trying to take them. And then look at the logical progression of your scenes. Does it make sense that if they're over here and, you know, I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but like they're in this scene over here and then they get to this other place and we're asking the reader to make some logical jumps. Tell us what that is, you know, have somebody comment on it and be like, wow, that's really incredible that they, you know, suddenly had this new ability. And if we're at that point, the reader is going to wonder what is informing this new ability. I'm going to learn at some point what the answer is to that, which is a reveal. Add suspense. MacGuffins, again, we do want to see the setup there. We want to see the hero make some decisions and then have it pay off at a certain time. And then again, always reader clarity. Often when something is not believable, it's because the reader doesn't understand what you're trying to achieve. So get it on the page, say the thing, and that will hopefully go away. Boring. This one's rough. I've definitely had it with my books. Often it's because there's kind of too much in terms of description or flashbacks or info dumps. Again, this gets into, are all these things relevant to story present? Are we learning this at this time because we have to know it for the POV character to make sense of what's going on in story present? Or are we seeing a bunch of description about something that doesn't actually inform what's going on for the protagonist? It doesn't feed the narrative drive. It confuses the reader. Reader confusion pulls people out, and pulling them out often is because they're a little bit bored. So look at your inside outline, look at that narrative drive and the change over time. Can you connect each one of the plot point pairings with this happened because of that, this happened because of that, this happened? That's a really good way to kind of catch those things so that you understand, have I gone off on a tangent that doesn't go anywhere, etc. And finally, is there clear opposition to what the protagonist wants? Or are they just like, oh, I'm going to wake up today and, you know, save the world? Like, who's stopping them from doing that? What is the antagonist doing? Does it make sense? Is it on the page and clear to the reader? Didn't like characters and voice. This always feels hyper personal. It is not personal. Again, it gets down to reader clarity. We want to know why the characters are doing something. We want to understand, you know, if someone is kind of unlikable on purpose. Like I have a character in my current novel that I wrote to be kind of standoffish. It's part of her major malfunction. It's what she faces as she goes through the story. It's possible I will have to change this because, again, I'm on revision number 20. But without understanding why she's like that, the reader can't root for her. We can't, you know, we don't really care if she succeeds because we just don't like her, because we don't understand what she's going for. We don't have empathy for her. So get that why on the page, make the reader understand why someone is doing something, why it matters, what their stakes are, what they're afraid of. Didn't like character's voice can sometimes be about agency too. If we're kind of seeing someone just like the hits keep coming and they're not making any decisions about how to get out of it, we want to see people make decisions even if they're the bad ones. And so play with tweaking that, and, you know, what does it look like if they decide to do something, as opposed to just having, you know, the tornado came and tore up their house, you know, like what are they going to do now that their house is gone? To quote Jessica Brody, save a cat. You can have a major malfunction, you can have someone who's hyper unlikable, but if they're coming across as like completely sociopathic or something, give them something that provides some empathy for the reader so we understand and we're like almost rooting for them, you know? And then perfection is boring. Super common first-time writer mistake is to have these like near perfect protagonists who don't change over time. We want to see change. We want to see people make mistakes. Part of the reason we read, you know, I read science fiction, I guess I'm using myself as an example, is because I'm probably not going to go to space. I want to know what that's like. I want to know what it's like to live in the future. I want to see what people are envisioning for that. And I don't want to see these characters be perfect as they encounter all these new things and face things that I'm not currently facing. So give them some malfunctions, and hopefully that will help increase the reader engagement. And finally, if you're way over under word count, target for sci-fi, and putting fantasy in the same category because it's often lumped, is 100 to 115K, sometimes as high as 120. Genre fiction, on the other hand, is like 90, 85 is kind of our target. So y'all get a bit more room for world building, which kind of makes me jealous, to be honest. But basically, if you're way over or under this, one of the most common things I hear from people who are like, I wrote 160,000 words and every word needs to be there. And then we go through the as is inside outline and we determine that like these 3 subplots don't actually serve the vision of the story that they're trying to tell. And so try to look at your as is inside outline with that in mind. You know, could this subplot be a different book? Could it be like the 3rd in the series or the 2nd? Does the ending make sense without it? That's usually a key that you can pull it out. And if you're too short, you know, if you're coming in at like 60K and you're trying to write adult genre fiction, sci-fi, whatever it is, and you're aiming for like 100, 110, can you add a twist by adding a new subplot? Can you give a new POV character a voice, add in a few chapters from them? Often that increases suspense because the reader is seeing both things from the POV character and from this other POV character. So they're learning things that the original POV, the protagonist, does not know, which you can imagine very quickly gets suspenseful because we know that there's a monster behind this corner and the protagonist is walking right toward it. And then finally, again, if you're too long, look for those info dumps, look for those like massive amounts of description, make sure it ties to story present and it's relevant. And if you're still stuck, consider hiring help at any point. But the most important thing I tell people when thinking about hiring a book coach is find someone you vibe with. Anyone from Author Accelerator is somebody that I would recommend up and down. It's just an absolutely wonderful group of people who all are completely into and live story all day, every day. But you want to find someone who gets what you're trying to do. And by that, I just mean someone who's like, yes, I adore this, you know, what you're trying to do with this story, with what your vision is. Because this person is going to be along for the ride, and it's a very intimate relationship. Telling our visions for our stories is something that's really special, and it's a huge honor to get to do this with someone. So find someone that you get along with and who understands what your goals are. And remember, a final reminder, books in the bookstore did not spring forth in their final state from the beginning, right? There are probably some magical people who can just do draft 1 and have it be perfect. I am not one of them. I have not met any one of them in real life yet. But books in the bookstore had like 17 pairs of professional eyeballs go over them and probably several years of thinking and iterating and revising before they came to you in their final state. And so in the depths of revision hell, it can be very easy to look at a book that has been published and be like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get there. Don't compare yourself. There's so much in between this revision hellish place and what ends up as the final product. And you can get there too, I promise. It just takes tenacity and keeping at it. And that is all I have. So that is my website, samanthaskull.com /sci-fi-pro writing aid is where I have all the links in this presentation, as well as my inside outline. I call it the revision gut check. It's meant to sit on top of Jenny Nash's. Again, this is her book. It's wonderful. You can also sign up for a free checkout call with me there. Even if you're just curious about book coaching and you're not interested in like me personally, I can direct you to any number of other book coaches. I know lots of wonderful people in this world, and I would be happy to help you. And I've also linked on that page to a bunch of books, craft books that I strongly recommend and adore. And that is all I have. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all learned and absorbed and are excited about your revision as opposed to finding it hellish. And I'll let Abby feed me some questions.
Thank you so much for that. And I think it was nice to end on that note after we've heard that our characters could be wrong, our plot's wrong, but we can do it.
Yeah.
So we do have a few questions here. Sarah has asked if you'd agree that compared to other genres, sci-fi gives a bit more leeway in terms of twists and turns in the middle of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so to use thriller, again, stretches across genre. You can have psychological thriller on a spaceship. You can have like the setting is really what changes with sci-fi. But at its core, a suspenseful story, a thriller story, whatever it is, you're aiming for about 3 twists. If you can get like 5 in there, that's amazing. If it works with 2, that's also great. But the goal is to just look at the cadence of your inside outline. Where do you have those kind of like low moments, and where do you have those high moments? Where do you have the reader that you've intentionally set up to be like, what? And then look back and have it all make sense. Yeah. So hopefully that answered your question.
And Daryl has asked, does your method work with multiple overlapping points of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have dual POV in my novel that I'm working on right now, and I just use color coding. I like colors, but you can also just label it like, you know, POV1, POV2. And that also really helps to know like what the reader is receiving when, so that if you're trying to set up some kind of twist or reveal, you're doing it in such a way that the reader's not guessing it with the second POV on the second scene, as opposed to like the 10th scene where you want it to be.
Great. We've had a question from Coffee Quills asking, any thoughts about word counts when combining longer genres, so like fantasy with normally shorter genres?
Yeah, so I mean, the word counts are all kind of like in quotes, right? Like these are goals, and we try to sort of aim within them, especially for debut, because if you send, so okay, here's a very specific example. If I were to query my my novel with 110,000 words and it's just straight thriller, anything over about 90 is going to raise agent eyebrows, because they're going to wonder whether or not I've actually edited enough. And so that's the question they're asking themselves. And so if you do have a science fiction thriller and you're coming in at like 110, just make sure you get science fiction in there so that they know that there's going to be more world building. If you have a thriller that's set in a place that doesn't need as much description, maybe aim for more like 95, 98, just under 100 is kind of the upper limit on that. Yeah.
Right. So we've got another question. How do you decide at what iteration whether to keep revising or scrap the book and start a new project?
It hurts when I hear that. I've definitely been there myself. I would say if you're feeling like that bummed out about it, put it down, work on a new project. Always have a new project that you're working on, particularly when you're waiting for feedback. Waiting is the absolute worst. And having something that you're working on instead can really like keep your brain going and distract you. And so give it 3 months, you know, like put it in a drawer. Metaphorical. I don't think any of us actually print out and have drawers anymore, but whatever it is, don't look at it and then come back to it with fresh eyes, and read it through. Be open, be like patient with yourself. And it's possible that like some chunk of this story is the story that you want to tell. You know, usually when we're that frustrated, it's like we're trying to do too many things and we haven't really narrowed in on the story that we truly want to tell. So hopefully that helps. I mean, I actually had this happen to me about a year ago. I had been on an R&R and then I got another revision from my agent, and I sent her the thing and she was like, oh my God, you did exactly what we talked about and it's working even less than when we started, which is like so devastating, right? But actually that was really freeing because I was able to put it down. I ended up taking like 2 months off from that book. And come back and realize the story I wanted to tell was much scarier and more about like more kind of contained than the story that I had originally kind of gone for. And that's the one she's kind of considering now. And so I think that when we feel like this, listen to your body and give it a minute and then go back and see what can be salvaged. And if you truly like don't like it, you have permission to stop. You know, you can go on to the next project. So
yeah. So we've got another question about what a good criteria is for selecting beta readers, and if you could ask one to get involved in early stages of your drafts.
Absolutely, yeah. So I like using betas to, you know, I might ask a friend to read like the first chapter or something if I'm playing with where I want to set up the story, or you know, if I have a client who's struggling with like, okay, I could start the story in any one of these 5 places, send it to someone who's just going to read 10 pages. That's a great way to sort of play with scenes. Or if you have, you know, if you're not a linear writer, I happen to be linear, but I have a bunch of clients who are not, and I'm super jealous because it sounds really cool. But you can have a scene that's kind of just in the middle or possibly toward the climax, give them just enough to sort of just see how it's flowing and see how hooked they are. And in terms of finding betas, you do want to be careful. I do not recommend using spouses, parents, sometimes siblings, but if there's tricky relationships there, that can be a little rough. You want to find people who kind of like absorb and adore the genre that you're writing in. And, if you're looking to if you're cross genre, like science fiction thriller, for example, find someone who reads just straight thrillers, see if they're bored is a terrible word to use, but like bored by the fact it's not set like right now. And then find someone who's really much more into the science fiction side of things, only reads that, and have them read it to see if the thriller part is interesting to them. So kind of think about who's in your life. There's so many, Twitter's a great place to find friends who are also writers. There's so many critique groups out there that you can join. But yeah, betas are precious. They're meant to be savored.
Yeah. And I suppose slightly related, someone's asked, how do we deal with the fear of sharing our work?
Yeah. Harshly, try to just get through it, take a deep breath. You can always caveat when you ask someone to read something when, if nobody else has seen it, for example, to tell them you're the first person who's seeing this. And so I need you to be a little gentle. I need you to tell me what you love before you tell me the 15 things you didn't like, right? And maybe give them a limit. Be like, can you please tell me 3 ways that you didn't like this, or answer these questions or whatever. That's where the questions come in, is it kind of gives a boundary around what people can say. I definitely have betas that I use that are much harsher, that I do not use in the beginning stages because I can't handle it then. And I am a sensitive flower, just like most writers. You can also hire a book coach. We're trained, and I won't speak for everybody who's a book coach, but my whole philosophy is aggressive cheerleading on what people are doing really well. And then let's think about, what it might look like if you were to change this. How does that affect your vision of the story, et cetera? Instead of just being I hate that, which I would never say. But, sometimes people who aren't trained might think that that's helpful. And it's that's not, nobody wants that. Yeah.
That's such a valuable point. It's such a vulnerable thing, as you said.
So scary. Yeah.
So I think that's about 6 o'clock. I think we're on the hour.
Awesome.
So thank you so much again for that presentation. I think we all learned a lot
welcome.
from that. And I've dropped some links in the chat with your website, some further resources, and some Pro Writing Aid links. So I hope everyone enjoyed it, and that we'll see you in some more sessions this week. Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Everyone.
Enjoy the week, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.